a video that talks about how I've been making a cover version of Gypsy Woman by Crystal Waters, a classic house tune from the early 90s. I'm using Reaper, which is a really great audio workstation app, and the song right now is made up of 6 tracks, and the first one of those is the organ track. The organ sound itself comes from a plugin by Roland, which I can't show you because if I do, it actually causes the app to crash, unfortunately. But this was recorded using an external keyboard as an input device. So if I just play the organ in solo mode, this should sound quite familiar to you. So you connect up your keyboard, play the part, record it in here in this channel, and if I double click that, it opens up the MIDI editor where it displays a virtual keyboard, and then each note can be individually moved around, or you can correct the volume, and you can basically fix up any problems with the recording in the MIDI editor. And it was mostly recorded in one take and then copy pasted throughout the duration of the song, because the organ really doesn't change throughout the song. And so that covers the organ. And the second part is the bass line. Same deal, played with an external keyboard using a sound patch from a plugin by Roland. And if I jump forward in time, it doesn't come in until about 30 seconds in. So if I hit solo, it's got a really fat round sound, which I really like. If I mix that with the organ, pretty happy with that sound. And the same deal, MIDI editor used to kind of customize and fix any problems. The third part, I'll skip the percussion and piano, is the drums. Now the drums really make this song sound great because they've got this real 90s vibe. If I solo that part and play some for you. So that comes from another plugin, and I can actually show that to you if I drag this window. It's Roland's TR-909 Rhythm Composer, which is one of the main drum machines of that period. It was used on tons of hit songs, and it's an absolutely awesome piece of kit. To buy one of these in real life, an actual real one of these now would cost $2,000 or $3,000, I think. They're really expensive. The individual sounds can be played by hitting these buttons here, and then you can click edit, and this opens up the pattern editor, and for each of the beats in the pattern you can assign a patch. You can also do stuff like you can make it a weak hit, so if I hit shift it hits it more softly, and by activating these you can build up quite complex rhythm patterns. You've also got different bars or variations, so if you start adding notes to the B and C variation, for example, then it will play those and you end up with a much longer rhythm pattern, and it can be quite complicated. Now the last thing to highlight in here really is the shuffle, and shuffle is rhythmic variation, and this is quite important, and I'll try and play some of that for you if you bear with me a sec. Now you'll notice the hi-hat has got a kind of a swing sound to it. If I turn off the shuffle, now it sounds more like a machine, but that's wrong. It really has to be this swing sound, and that's where the shuffle feature comes in useful. Okay, you can also edit the relative volume levels of each patch, and also the tuning and various other things. It's very powerful. Great plugin. So the next part is, actually no, I missed out a part. So another key part of the drums is the bandpass filter. So the bandpass filter is a way of filtering out low and high frequencies, and this is very important at the beginning of the tune. So if I go back to the start of this track, like so, you'll notice that you can hear some of the drum and a very small amount of hi-hat. and it's not until here where it really picks up, and that is done using this bandpass filter. And the last element of this is the equalizer, and the equalizer is essentially a fancy volume knob, and I've boosted the high frequency sounds, so this will allow the hi-hats and cymbals to stand out in the mix and make it sound brighter. That's really cool. What's next? So percussion is another part. So even though the drums are great, there's actually quite a lot of percussion in this song. If I fast forward and excuse me. If I fast forward and try and show you some of those solo, that's what they sound like by themselves. And then if I add the drums, there's a second set of percussion later on here. This is a sort of a clave sound with a lot of reverb on it. And all of these get mixed together at the very end. So if I blast you with some of that, hopefully I can show you. Yeah, it's at the end here. Okay, so lots of fun to be had with the percussion, and it really adds to the song. And the piano part is used to reinforce the organ sound, make the organ sound brighter. So if I solo that and give you a taste. So it's a really cheesy, unrealistic sounding piano, but that's fine because it's just there to brighten up the organ. So play those together. And one of the key parts of the organ, the piano part, is that the volume of this varies. It's not a flat volume. And rather than playing the volume by hand, this is done using automation. And to show you how that works, if I click trim, and you can see I've got a new track in here. This is the automation track for the volume level of this piano sound. And you'll notice that it's not a flat line. There's a lot of little data points here, and you can drag and drop these to change the volume level of the track that it's controlling. And this makes the mix sound just a lot more dynamic, which is a lot of fun. Hide this. So that's the piano, and I think we've covered all the main tracks. The last two things to really talk about are the mixer. At the bottom, you've got the virtual mixing desk, and this really does two things. One is it lets you control the volume level of each of the tracks. That's what these volume knobs are. It also lets you do routing. Routing is where you can take signal from one track and pipe it to some other place. And I've used that on this track to route the bass drum from the drum track into a separate track. And that's listed here. And the only reason I've done that is to use it with a technique called sidechain compression. So if I play the drums by themselves, like so, and then if I mute the drum part, you just get the drums. Now what that means I can do is I can then take this track and route it somewhere else, and I can pipe it into the bass line. And the reason I've done this is to turn down the volume of the bass line and allow the bass drum to stand out more, and that's what sidechain compression is. So if I click on, I think it's this guy here, yeah, here we go. So this window is showing me a compressor, and the compression is basically a way to turn down the volume very, very, very quickly. And I've set it up so that the bass drum sound is the trigger for the compressor. And the way it works is like so. So I'm playing the bass line with the bass drum in the mix. And then this guy here is the threshold control. If I take it way down, you'll notice that the bass line kind of fades away and the drum takes over. But that's too far. We want it to be, we want to keep the bass line and we want to allow the bass drum to really kind of jump out of the mix. And that's what sidechain compression is. And that's used a lot on club music these days to really make the bass pulse. but you can also use it to do a lot of other things. And the last thing to show you is probably how the song fades out at the very end. So if I play the very end of the track, you'll notice that it fades away. And again, rather than doing that, rather than doing that by hand, that's done using automation on the master track. The master track takes signals from all of the other tracks and builds the overall mix. And like everything else, you can add automation to this. So you can see here's the volume automation, and there's a data point here, and I've made it just turn down, and you can drag and drop these guys. And that's it. I think we've covered everything, and I hope you found that interesting. Cheers.